Hello everyone, this is Akshay over here, and this is going to be a video tutorial mainly meant for students who are willing to prepare for Karnataka CET and NEET examination. So today we'll be beginning with a chapter from the first year, that is Unit 1. The Unit 1, that is the diversity in the living world, and in that the chapter 1 called as the living world. What comes to our mind when we hear the phrase living world? So different type of organisms ranging from microorganisms to macroorganisms, that is plants and animals. That's what they come to our mind. So not only there is diversity of living world, at the same time it is very much fascinating and wonderful to observe. You see that all these organisms, just a fraction of them, this image is just meant for representation purpose. So you can see that all these organisms live in a particular geographical locality, what we call it as the habitat. And habitat are actually of different types. You don't find a single type of habitat everywhere. Now, each and every habitat is having its own unique species makeup. You don't find a single species living in a particular habitat. It is a heterogeneous species makeup in the habitat. So now, in a population, among the members of a population, there will be cooperation and also conflict. So this cooperation and conflict is not only existing among the members of a population, but also among the populations, right? So this definitely brings a question to our mind that so much complexity is existing in the living world. So the question is, what is life? Which itself is having two questions. That is, first is being a technical question, and another reason is a philosophical question. The technical question is being what is living and non-living. On the other hand, what this philosophical question is, what is the purpose of life? Why do we live? What is the purpose of our existence? That is a philosophical question. So now, being a science student and being a biological student, obviously we are very much interested in understanding a technical question, that is, what is living and non-living. So if you want to say anything as living, it should be having its own defining characters or defining properties. Okay, a property which is exhibited only in the case of living organism, right? So such properties are growth, reproduction, sensing the environment, providing a particular response, and metabolism, ability to self-replicate, self-organize, interaction, and emergence, right? So these are the characters of living entities. To tell anything as a living, all of these should exhibit these characters. So looking into the first one, that is growth. So growth, what is growth? It is increase in mass, and another twin property is increase in the number of individual or increase in the cell number. So both are the twin properties of growth. So in the case of multicellular, such as plants and animals, plants grow throughout their life. On the other hand, animals grow up to only a certain age. In the case of unicellular, you can see that they mainly grow by cell division. Now, growth and reproduction are mutually exclusive events in the higher plants and animals. You don't see that growth and reproduction are being same. They're mutually exclusive events. Now, the problem is that we cannot say growth as completely a defining feature of living organism, because non-living things also grow, and this growth is mainly by accumulation of material on the surface, which is observed in the case of mountain boulders and sand mounds. Right. So, but the difference between the living and non-living growth is that in the case of living beings, we see the growth is occurring from the inside, contrary to the non-living, where the growth is mainly occurring on the surface. Right. So, thus, based upon the argument or based upon the criteria for which we are considering the growth, we cannot say that growth is a defining property of living beings. We cannot completely say that growth is a feature of living organisms. Even non-living also show or exhibit growth. The next one we are having is the reproduction. So what is reproduction? The ability to produce offsprings or progeny is called as reproduction. So here we see mainly two modes. The first mode is being the sexual mode of reproduction, another being is the asexual mode of reproduction. The sexual mode of reproduction mainly involves production of gametes, and these gametes unite and form the zygote, and they develop into an individual, right? So this kind of mode of reproduction is mainly observed in the case of multicellular organisms. Fungi being an example for asexual mode of reproduction, where you can see fungi produces numerous spores and that multiply and develop into new fungi itself, means new individual. So now we also see there are some peculiarities. For example, regeneration. The regeneration is the ability to regrow the lost body parts is called as regeneration, which is observed in the case of planaria. Planaria, as we all know, it comes into the phylum Platyhelminthes. Now, fragmentation is also a mode of reproduction, which we observe in the case of Protonema of mosses, fungi, and also filamentous algae. Right? Now, in the case of unicellular organisms such as bacteria or amoeba, reproduction is synonymous with growth, because that is what we said in the case of growth, right? Growth means mainly increase in the mass and or also increase in the cell number. So in the case of bacteria, even amoeba, you can see that with every cell division, the number of bacteria is also increasing, and hence we can call it as growth. So now, even in the case of reproduction, we cannot call reproduction as a defining feature of living organisms. Why? What is the reason behind that? Because there are some exceptions to this rule. For example, mules, right, and worker honeybee are sterile in nature, right? They cannot reproduce. So as a result, we cannot consider reproduction as a defining feature of living organisms. Now the next one is the metabolism. Now, what is metabolism? Again, we all know it is the reaction that are actually occurring inside an organism or cells. Now, this is definitely a defining character of any living organism, because all living organisms are mainly made up of chemicals, and we call these chemicals as what? Biomolecules, which are constantly changed into one or the other. So this interchanging reactions, we call it as metabolic reactions, which are again of two types, catabolism and anabolism. So the sum of all chemical reactions that are occurring inside a body or an organism, it is called as metabolism. So now we can see that no non-living thing can show metabolism, right? So we see growth in the case of even non-living entities, and in the case of reproduction, obviously no non-living thing can reproduce, but still there are exceptions in the living organisms itself. There are some living organisms which cannot reproduce. So hence growth and reproduction cannot be a defining feature, all in defining feature. But in the case of metabolism, it is the only defining feature or character of the living organisms, right? Again, the exception is the cell-free systems. Okay, the cell-free systems show metabolism. What do we mean by cell-free systems? Isolated reactions that actually occurring inside the test tube, right? How can we isolate a reaction? What do we mean by isolation of reaction? For example, we can just break open the cell by rupturing the plasma membrane, and all the contents of the cytoplasm, including the organelles and everything, if you allow it to settle inside a test tube, the reactions will be still going on. That is what actually we mean by the term the cell-free systems, right? So an isolated reaction occurring inside a test tube is neither living nor non-living, but surely it is a living reaction. Hence, from this point, we can say that the cellular organization is a characteristic of all living organisms. Now, sensing the surroundings, and this can be done by the help of sense organs, that is eye, ear, skin, etc. So sense organs are playing an important role in sensing the surroundings, and after sensing the surroundings, an appropriate responses can be brought out. So the responses can be in the form of physical or chemical or biological, right? And interestingly, humans are the only organisms or only creatures that have self-consciousness, means they're aware, self-aware that who they actually are. So consciousness, hence, is also a defining character of living beings. Now, living phenomena, that is anything, any entity is living, it is called as the living phenomena, is because of interactions. Saying this much, we will begin with some sample questions. The first question is growth is. The first option is increase in the cell mass or number, increase in length, reproduction, increase in metabolism. So the right option for this is the first one, that is increase in the cell mass and number. That is what actually we have defined, the twin characteristics of growth. Moving on, the next question is in higher plants and animals, reproduction and growth events are mutually inclusive, sometimes mutually inclusive. The third option is mutually exclusive, both exclusive and inclusive. So obviously it is mutually exclusive, means they are completely different. The next question is living organisms are self-replicating, evolving, self-interacting, and all of the above. The fourth option is all of the above, and the answer for this is all of the above. All living organisms reproduce. except, so odd man out or odd one out. So the option is very simple, that is the mule. Cow can reproduce, queen honeybee can reproduce. It's the only fertile female in the whole colony. Right? Worker honeybees are completely sterile. They cannot reproduce. Planaria is an example for mainly regeneration, right? And it can also reproduce. So finally, the last question is an organism that can regrow the lost part of its body and becomes a new organism is called as reproduction, regeneration, reorganization of body structures, or the last option is none of the above. So the answer is regeneration. So regeneration is the ability to regrow the lost body parts, right? An example for regeneration is planaria, the option which has been given in the previous question over here, right? So in the next video, we will look into the taxonomy. Okay, thank you.